First, pleasure for me to welcome all the ministers and dignitaries to the council chamber. This is where the ICAO Council meets every day as and when required, to approve policies for the organization, but also importantly to adopt the standards and recommended practices that states have to implement and the industry have to implement. This year, as you notice, that the format of our IWAF changed a little bit. Consistent with the concept of innovation, we decided we needed to innovate and not to have us speak to each other from prepared texts, but to have the opportunity for exchange. And there have been a number of topics that have been provided to you from which you are supposed to have selected areas that you would like to speak on. It is important that we manage the time effectively. The essence at the end of the day is for us to get the summary of our discussion over these days. I'm grateful that you all came to participate, and those of you that had the opportunity just earlier to visit the various booths of exhibits that have been presented. I'm sure you will appreciate that innovation is something that we all have to pay particular attention to. The format of the IWAF this year is focused on two areas. One is to take the advantage of your presence here to introduce to all of you the innovation, the various innovation taking place in aviation. For us to appreciate the pace of that innovation. And for us to appreciate that we need to do something in order to make the new entrants into the industry welcome. And to have systems in place in order to accommodate their needs. The other aspect of it is that for us to be able to do that, we will have to change our modus operandi. We have to change the way we work. Traditional actors like airports, air navigation service providers, airlines, they know what to expect when they come through the doors of regulatory bodies. But the new entrants, they may not be as forgiving in the way we receive them. So it is important that we also innovate our own processes. At the end of the day, the key challenge for all of us is to ensure that we take the full advantage of the innovation that is taking place for the benefits of our societies and economies. That is the key, that we can take full advantage of this. As you would have also noticed that the traditional environment has changed. It's changing very fast. We knew that aircraft has to operate mainly from an airport, fly through the airspace, land at another airport. And so when we want to travel, we all head to the airports. But that is changing. With urban mobility, urban air mobility, with delivery of packages with drones, movement is towards the urban areas, but it's also towards the parks. When the drones are being used to herd elephants at safari parks. But this is aviation. As long as something flies that is not an insect or not a bird, that is a mechanical device, it is of interest to the aviation sector. It is our sector. So this, during the upcoming 1 hour and a half, maybe, I think we are running behind schedule, we will dive into the matter of innovative concepts in the aviation industry, such as mobility revolution, sharing economy, and automation and electrification across all modes of transport. These new technologies and concepts have the capacity to generate great benefits for the wider society under the ultimate condition of adequate implementation. One of our most critical challenges is to establish institutional, legal, and regulatory frameworks and business models in which innovation can be sourced and grown while ensuring its safe, secure, efficient, and sustainable use. It is important as we innovate that we continue to pay attention to the level of safety and security the traveling public and the society at large has come to expect from aviation, and to maintain this level of safety in everything that we do. Because as was mentioned by one of the discussants in the plenary earlier today, public confidence is something that is our industry is highly dependent on. We will explore together the options at our availability to understand, address, and adopt new technologies for fuel realization, the potential, but at the same time mitigating potential risks. With respect to the agenda, with the objective to paint a holistic picture of the matter, our agenda will revolve around three main topics, or what I would call the so-called pillars, to ensure that we capture all relevant angles of the debate. We'll firstly engage our discussion by sharing our experience, understanding, and opinions on emerging technologies in aviation and how this will model the future of our industry. Secondly, we will focus on how to create and encourage an incentivizing environment for innovation to seed, grow, and bring the anticipated fruit. We will finalize the holistic picture of innovation with our third pillar dedicated to identifying and addressing the challenges and risks imposed by the emergence of new technologies. As a conclusion to our exercise this morning, and a way of summarizing our discussion, we will review the draft outcome statement that has been circulated previously, and I hope you have all received these. So please consider this roundtable as a platform for sharing and exchange of knowledge, experience, and best practices amongst us, extensively involved in innovation by the sole nature of the industry which we work in. This will be the focus of the first Ministerial Roundtable. As I mentioned, there will be two roundtables. The second one will focus on those areas we as regulators, policymakers will have to innovate to change our business model, the way we do our work, so that we can be more welcoming for innovators. And with that, I want to invite the Secretary General, Dr. Liu, to elaborate further on the three topics that will be discussed in this morning session. Secretary General, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished honorable ministers and distinguished guests, good morning. I would like to join the President of the Council to welcome you all to this roundtable meeting. As mentioned by the President of the Council, our agenda for this morning's session will be oriented around three main pillars to provide a holistic approach to the theme of policy and business models for innovation. To facilitate the discussion, I would like to offer some supplementary thoughts for your consideration. The first pillar consists of capturing a holistic picture of the technological innovation we are seeing around us. We will look at which technology developments have been significantly changing the transport sector, in particular aviation, for the past decade, as well as what is your expectation of the technological advances that will impact and affect the aviation sector over the next 30 years. We will define the concepts of urban mobility revolution, sharing economy, and information-related technologies, and how this will alter industry dynamics, including its profitability and capabilities. To finalize this picture, we will identify who are the unconventional actors, our new entrants, and that make an impact on aviation businesses, activities, and market. Our second pillar will set as objective to define means and opportunities to incentivize the innovation environment. We will look more closely at what kind of a role governments can play to make innovation an enabling technology force in aviation and to drive further technological innovation. We will identify what types of incentives governments can leverage to become innovation partners for entrepreneurs and to encourage innovation in aviation in both large and small scale. Governments are also often asked to facilitate timely integration, deployment, and application of new technologies, and we will discuss the best practices and lessons learned in this field. We will conclude the second pillar on innovation incentives with a discussion around resource mobilization for research and development to rule out new technologies and attract new entrants and new talent from within and outside industry. Our third and last pillar needs to address the elephant in the room, which is, of course, the challenges and risks when introducing new technologies. A fair and thorough assessment of these challenges and risks is a prerequisite for any successful, efficient, and sustainable development and implementation of a new technology and business model. This morning, we already heard the distinguished panelists to share with us their thoughts. So we will therefore examine how governments can ensure that the introduction of new technologies is safe, secure, efficient, and sustainable without imposing additional barriers to innovation and its delivery. We will identify strategies helping to best materialize and promote the benefits from new technologies whilst managing and mitigating potential risks associated with them. We will also share our practices on the equal treatment of existing services and new market entrants to ensure the adhesion of new technologies in existing markets. Our final and very important exercise today will be to assess the level of urgency to modernize existing aviation policies and regulations in responding to technological advancement. And accordingly, we should identify which areas should be more urgent. I look forward very much to hearing from your thoughts, experience, best practices, and lessons learned on these three pillars. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Secretary General, for the in-depth introduction to our threefold exercise today. Before we proceed to interventions from participants, I would like to familiarize the table with the proceedings of today's discussion. First, we will address one topic at a time to offer enough space and time for reserved and spontaneous interventions. Upon announcement of the topics to be discussed, I will invite the speakers that have already reserved an intervention to press the speak button. Following these interventions, I will invite spontaneous speakers to manifest themselves with the speak button as well. Second, all speakers are kindly reminded that the intent of this session is to have an interactive discussion rather than statements. I will kindly ask each intervention to be brief and concise with maximum of 2 to 3 minutes. In the council, I applied 2 minutes. Third, within our common objective to have an efficient and open dialogue, I would strongly suggest that we now agree that all protocol requirements and addresses are implicitly respected and can therefore be left out for the sake of time. So the first topic is technological innovation for aviation. By the way, you have the speak button, you press, I will see your name, I will call you, and then you'll be recognized. And there is interpretation into the 6 languages, and you will get the channels from 1 to 6. We will now address the first pillar in which we outline the technological innovation act, and I would like to invite the minister from Finland to present his intervention. Finland, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I agree on what you said in your introduction, and I found the panel in the morning very useful. What we've witnessed in Helsinki is that we have in land transport a lot of disruption, new market-based services complementing public transport. And we are now thinking how to complement that also with the aviation services. And this means, of course, that we have to take into account the city structure, the land use, planning. We have to think about a bit further how to use hubs in transfer centers so that we can also enable aviation in urban environment. And what we would like to see is, of course, that we have a dynamic and a strong ICAO involvement in this, so that we can be sure that the air traffic management is safe and it will be successful to introduce these new kind of aviation services. It also means that we have to have addresses in 3 dimensions. So there are a lot of in urban environment that we as policymakers now have to tackle and discuss with stakeholders and cities how we can make the environment most plausible for these new innovations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Finland. Singapore, please.
Thank you, Dr. Aliu. Because I've spent some time at a plenary, so I do not want to add further, other than maybe just touch on one aspect of innovation that affects aviation. That my observation is that innovations have a way of cutting across modes of transport. So traditional classification by regulators and in fact even government ministries in many countries of land transport is separate from sea transport and from air transport and organized that way. And in fact in many countries, because of coalition governments, different parties take charge of different sectors. Yet technology is going in a way which I think one of the panel speakers also mentioned that this morning, about multimodal. So especially when you go beyond passengers to logistics for goods. So how do you facilitate such innovation so that it makes sense for the industry, it makes sense for the market, it makes sense for the economy? One has to often cross regulatory barriers. So these will have implications, I think, first within countries and at UN bodies, for example, ICAO. That how do we then better coordinate with other global regulators in the other sectors? So I thought I'd just leave that thought on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Kaur, for that. For example, if we take the issue of trying to get an environmentally sustainable journey. The journey starts from your home, you travel by road, either in a car, whether it's an electric car, you come to the airport, you move between terminals, before you take your flight, you land at the other airport. We can only speak about being sustainable for a journey for a passenger that flies if all the modes of transport which are engaged are also sustainable. And so we have to pay particular attention to innovation in all these sectors in order to have a combined green journey as you may. So this is very important aspect that you've added to the discussion. I want to ask the European Commission to take the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and also thank you very much for your inspiring introductory words, which I think are very well suited also for the discussion we have had already. Like my good friend from Singapore, I also don't want to take much of your time because you were already extremely generous with me earlier this morning, and I was able to address on this topic. I only want to perhaps use the opportunity to reinforce exactly the same message that you did now also, Mr. President, as well as the Minister from Singapore, namely that the travel as such will be not anymore so much considered to be focusing on one particular transport mode, be it an aviation, but rather a combination of different modes, a multimodal approach which could be seen as a trip or as a journey. And here we come to another point of innovation which perhaps was not that explicitly mentioned in the morning, and which is part of the digitalization, and that is actually the distribution, because it has made it possible also I would say, the alternative distribution channels and the digitalization, which has in a way democratized also the access to travel. And this is changing a lot the way how we see the journeys, and in aviation included. And as we have also seen that these are actually promoting the new business models, and the companies which would have difficulties in following that might find themselves in difficulties, as we also unfortunately were witnessing last night. And I believe that this is also another important element, because the digitalization, which can make a lot of improvements when it comes to safety, when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to environment, when it comes to capacity, then the distribution component should also be seen as part of the innovation which we are promoting in this context. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrik. ACI, please. Angela.
Mr. President, sorry. As we've all been saying, the business landscape for aviation and for airports is changing in all regions of the world. And we just cannot keep doing things the way we're doing them now. Technological innovation evolves quickly to keep up to the speed and to capitalize on the benefits, because I think we should see technology not just as a disruptor, but as an enabler. And there's lots of technology in the wider world that affects aviation, and that can be used by aviation, and that is starting to be used by aviation and by airports. And we need a clear framework with government in which to operate, and regulatory permission to change the way we do things. We have a lot of different programs and fits and starts going on. I would mention something that ACI and IATA has started doing in 2017, a joint initiative that we call NEXT, New Experience, Travel, and Technologies. And it looks at the future of travel. It's trying to set a vision for the future of travel to encompass all the individual projects and concepts that are going on, having to do with the passenger journey, the cargo journey, the aircraft journey, as well as the ground journey of vehicles. And we are also trying to have a new and more effective approach to security with the Smart Security program, working with airlines and regulators to drive innovation in passenger and baggage screening, to maximize security, support airports with operationally viable solutions, and create a calmer, more desirable experience for passengers. So between the two, we're trying to address some of the airport challenges, because we know that with the forecasted growth in air service demand, we cannot build enough airports, enough runways, enough roadways to do things the way we're doing them. So those are some of the things I would like to see discussed, and try to come up with some ways of perhaps ICAO encouraging pilots. There was someone mentioned in the discussion this morning about having series of pilots and industry fora that ICAO would supervise, but everything doesn't have to go through the entire ICAO process to apply worldwide on everything, because that just takes too long. And everything is not going to work, but if you only deal with things that you know for sure are going to work, you're not going to have innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, ACI. Council, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President. It's interesting. I'm going to answer some of the questions actually on here. Over the last 10 years, we often don't talk about actually. There's some really good stuff that has happened. Innovation has occurred, you know, and three immediately jump to mind. Space-based surveillance. You know, we can now see 100% of the globe. World first, never been done before. Digitization that Henrik's already mentioned, but digitization of towers. We have not even realised the potential, I don't think, of what's really possible in digitization of towers. And then we've got predictive analytics. For the first time in air traffic, we're starting to predict the future in any operational scenario you can think of. You know, that's going to fundamentally change, and is already fundamentally changed where we are. And then we keep talking about these new airspace users, and I think about it slightly different, because new airspace users is nothing new. Since the advent of aviation, we've had balloons, we've had jet engines, supersonic, airships, I can go on. But most recently, yes, we've had the drones, and we've got space flight and so on. But actually, it's not the airspace users, it's the behaviours and the thought processes, I think, of these people, and also other people that are not naturally aviation attributable. And I think James said it this morning. It's about these new non-aviation industries that are now coming into aviation and thinking very, very differently. So they're more agile. They're more responsive, and one might say, well, how I would say is, they actually don't obey to the norm. They ignore the rules, they ignore the regulations, and they do what they want to do, because they can. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us in this room? What does it mean for air traffic? And I would like ANSPs, I would like governments, I would like ICAO to be actually more like them. More agile, more nimble, more responsive. And we can only do that if we help each other. I don't think any of us can do that on our own. And if we look at all these industry dynamics changing, in the whole of aviation is changing. You know, the airspace is being maximised for the use of multiple airborne vehicles. Is that going to lead to commoditisation of airspace? Will that drive a fundamentally different business model that we're all facing? Possibly. Technology is being invested in. These new entrants, these new players are investing a lot of money, heavily investing in new technologies, new ways of thinking. So therefore, we need to continue to invest to be able to meet that. And that's a bit of a challenge, because we can't do that on our own, as I said before. It's all about working together. It's about the entire aviation industry, I think, collaborating just to keep pace with this disruptive behaviour, whether that's partnerships, whether that's joining up, whether that's collaboration, cooperation, whichever words you want to use. But there's as a result of that, there's one final subject that I would like us to discuss. And I fully support and am wholly committed to No Country Left Behind. But how do we not prevent any country from moving forward? Because we need to help the industry and countries move forward where possible, whilst simultaneously not leaving anybody behind. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we face. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You've raised very interesting policy questions for us going forward. But if I may also say something about, yes, you mentioned the airspace is not finite. What is available to us is limited. And as government leaders, this is also an issue that we have to pay particular attention to, because there's a lot of restricted airspace that we cannot make use of in order to take full advantage of the systems we have for air traffic management. Now, having said that, it is also important for us to, I often question the current aircraft models that have been produced, the normal traditional planes. The airliners have a lot of equipage that is standard equipment. How much of that standard equipment are ANSPs ready to take full advantage of? how do we close the gap between the production of those aircrafts and the equipment that is on board and taking the full advantage of them based on how the ANSP systems, the systems for air traffic management that we have. How do we close, if there is a lag in that, how do we close that lag? I leave that to you to think about as I give the floor to Ayata. Is Ayata here? Yes, Alexander, why are you hiding?
Thank you, Mr. President. Three points. First of all, to answer the first question, in the past decade, probably the technology that has most influence of the airline industry is the digital in two areas. In the distribution and the relation with the customer. If you remember a decade ago, we the airlines, we were not knowing you. We were discovering you as soon as you were getting to the counter for check-in. Now we know you from the beginning when you type on your keyboard. That's a complete different relation we have with our passengers and customers. It's also true for the use of digital technology on the ground. Frankly, now it's even the security part is sometimes a bit difficult from the passenger point of view. It has significantly improved to have digital boarding and e-check-in, all that stuff. It's better. But that's the two areas on which we have had some significant influence. For the 30 next years, I would like to mention two of them, two areas. We desperately need environment-friendly aircraft. Whatever they are, whether they use electric, hydrogen, or more likely biofuels, that is for us absolutely key. The second area on which technology will have a strong influence on us is the big data, especially for predictive analysis on maintenance and safety. That will have an enormous impact for us, enormous impact, even in terms of cost. And just to answer the last question, which is the new entrance, we have something to do on the drone operators. We are thinking in IATA, to probably to open our association to these companies. After all, they are an air transport company. Well, they are young. So it's not decided yet in the organization, but we have to do something with these guys. And the regulation of the drones, it raises a lot of questions, including, sorry to say that in this area, but should we rethink some parts of the Chicago Convention? When you think about regulating the drones, should we think of that? And the other, and for the new entrants, the other ones that could also be disruptors are the big retail web firms, such as Google of this planet, that may have an enormous impact on aviation. Just two examples. Already, Google has no access to the inventory of the airline. They cannot sell tickets. They do not sell tickets. You have noticed that. Now, when you use Google, you have redirected to the website of the airline because they do not sell tickets. But as soon as they will be able to sell our tickets, I can tell you it will change our life. And it will change our life. I don't know it to what extent, by the way, and to which direction. The other area on this point is, the fact that we are noted everywhere with the social networks and the quality of the product or the service we deliver. We are appreciated and noted on everything, route by route, aircraft by aircraft, crew by crew. If you take an aircraft from Geneva to Montreal, let's say, if the company is noted, the flight is noted, the crew is noted, everything. So the TripAdvisor appreciation of our activity is coming to us. So it was already difficult, to satisfy all our passengers. It will become really, really, really hard now. So that's some of the areas in which we think that technology influence our business in the airline. Just a last point. As we are not very rich, the airlines, I underline this point, we are not heavily technological companies. We use technological objects, aircraft, systems, but we have no means to invest in big technologies. We would like to, but
Yeah, thank you, Ayata. In your answer, you provided answers to the three subtopics we have, but we'll look at that. One issue you've raised is about, do we need to look at the Chicago Convention in order to regulate drones? And we had this challenge at the time before thinking that we set standards for international aviation. That is equipment that crosses national boundaries. But our member states came to us and said, no, we need your support in this area. And we set about providing that support. Perhaps rather than think about changing the Chicago Convention, we should actually maybe rethink at ICAO what is our mission. Are we an organization that sets standards for international aviation? Or are we an international organization that sets standards for aviation? So depending on what we think about that, then we can decide whether it's something that we have to look at the Chicago Convention. Because at the end of the day, all the member states here, I do not think you apply different standards for aircraft that cross national boundary, different from the aircraft that operate within your boundary. I guess the only difference is when it comes to the issue of compensation, whether you are subject to Montreal Convention 99 or you have a different regime for compensation of third party. Otherwise, I would expect that your aerodromes or your NSPs, the aircraft that you operate, everything, you apply the same standards. At the end of the day, the traffic, international and domestic, they mix within your territory. So it's not possible to have different standards. So we have to think. Thank you, Alessandro, for bringing that issue up. That is something we have to look at. Secretary General.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just follow what the President just mentioned. It's at the last assembly, member states give ICAO's power to develop sort of a guidance for the drone. That's sort of beyond our boundary. And also per member state's request, because from this morning's panel discussion, there's a clear indication that the need to harmonize the even domestic regulations or practices in order to facilitate innovation and facilitate new entrants, and in particular, I think to ensure also safety and security, and also to stimulate the advancement of the new technology. I think with that thought, I think we are looking for the further member states' interests to see what is ICAO's role to play. And here this morning, and many times to see even this, just starting with this roundtable discussion, ICAO's role, to strengthen the ICAO's role, and what ICAO should do, and what member states and the industry are looking for ICAO's a role to play. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary General. And I think I give the floor now to ICC AIA.
On the issue of new entrants, if we think about this broadly, it's not just, as we were saying earlier today, traditional new companies in traditional manufacturing space. We have companies like Google and Wing that are turning to aviation to change their business model. Companies turning to aviation to perform things that they did on the ground before, like using drones to inspect infrastructure. The member associations of ICC AIA, like ASD in Europe, AIA in the United States, already are absorbing some of these new entrants. It's one of the more existential conversations we have as an association. What is aerospace? But recognizing we need to make room for those new entrants. We need to welcome them up here. And I would just echo what Canso said earlier. It's not just new technology that's exciting. It's new business models, new ways of thinking about what they can do with this technology, how they can combine it, how they can incorporate things that aren't traditionally aerospace. And so when we bring those new entrants in, we will be defeated. We'll defeat ourselves if we force them into the traditional paths and models we've been working. We need to make sure we listen to them about what it is their needs entail, and so that we can include that in the work that we do. And while we do need to harmonize in many ways to speed the process, we have to be careful that we don't get rid of flexibility, because these companies are all approaching these problems, these concepts in different ways. And so if we're overly prescriptive in the regulatory process, we'll be turning these new companies away that are thinking about ways to do things that we haven't even imagined yet.
Thank you, SCCIA. Now I go to the industry. Airbus.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, from an airline, from an aircraft manufacturer perspective, I think I would answer the second one, but in a way covering the first. We have a bunch of technologies which are available at the moment and which are changing us, which have changed us, and which will change us. And we have technologies that are continuously changing us, like digitalization, like the improvement we have on our aircraft. I mean, some people say the aerospace has been 50 years until the 707, and since then we've improved the 707. That's true. A lot of the technologies which have brought us here are technologies we're going to improve again around airframes, propulsion systems. We are continuously and in a sustainable manner improving. Now, we are facing unprecedented challenges as far as sustainability is concerned, and the digitalization may disrupt us further than the way we've used it so far. So these are food for thoughts. And to the second question about the technological advances affecting us for the next 30 years, we do believe that clearly there will be more automatization, more autonomy, more for the sake of resilience and safety than talking about a pure commercial consideration like turning single pilot or removing pilot at all. It's more to make our aircraft safer and to ensure that the air transportation can further grow without jeopardizing safety. And the other one is the very clear environmental challenge. I was yesterday at the UN Climate Council sharing a roundtable on that topic. And clearly on this one, we can't move without disruptions. So I think it was said by Alexandre de Juniac on the fact that whatever the technology, there's something to be done, be it electrification, the use of hydrogen, change of the flight formula. Our industry will have to use one or a combination of those technologies to reinvent itself, which I think is something that looks difficult and sometimes a dream, but it's achievable. Who would have thought that we would be where we are today 50 years ago? I think we can do it, but it's a matter of alliance, of alignment, of inclusion of the new entrants, and that's to the fourth question, and of all together making it happen, which is not so easy as we are many stakeholders.
Thank you, Airbus. On the 27th of this month, precisely Friday, Greta Thunberg is going to be in Montreal, and we most probably be in ICAO. We can talk about the electrical propulsion system, or hydrogen, and coming in on stream in the years 2040 and 2030. But I doubt that if I make that statement, will suffice, will be sufficient to allay the concerns of the young generation. We will have to do a faster job in the aviation industry. We tend to be very precise. And because we're a globally regulated industry, we tend to refrain from making political statements. We want to say things that are technologically feasible within the time that we can implement, but we are in the same environment, working with other sectors that do not have to do that. They just make bold statements. How they get there, whether they get there, is not an issue, and we have to find a balance in communicating with the young people as to what is currently achievable, what we are aiming at, and the timeline for accountability that we are prepared to accept while meeting their needs to have a green aviation yesterday. So But that is a policy challenge that we will have to work around in these next few days as we are faced with, I think, 100,000 people coming to Montreal to march as far as aviation. So don't be concerned. On Friday, you will see a lot of young people around the ICAO building. I just felt I should mention that. But now, now I give the floor to Mexico, please.
Gracias. Esta mañana en el panel interesantísimo que tuvimos, se habló de la importancia que el desarrollo tecnológico debe tener en relación con la sensibilidad social. Y creo que esto es un tema fundamental porque el desarrollo tecnológico debe tener un carácter holístico. Es importante este enfoque porque el sector aeroespacial no se refiere solamente al espacio aéreo, ni solamente a los que utilizan los aviones para trasladarse. En México, por ejemplo, el 77% de los mexicanos nunca se han subido a un avión. Hoy estamos en un momento en que tenemos que desarrollar una nueva infraestructura para la zona más poblada de México. Tenemos una ciudad de 20 y tantos millones de habitantes y un aeropuerto saturado y tenemos que desarrollar el aeropuerto. Y los conflictos fundamentales son sobre los no actores del sector aeroespacial que se oponen a la construcción de nuevos aeropuertos. El desarrollo tecnológico debe ser sensible a los impactos que tiene el sector aéreo en las zonas urbanas, el crecimiento de las zonas urbanas alrededor de las infraestructuras, el impacto sobre lo que hoy es un tema fundamental, que es el cambio climático, y también considerar la situación entre los países, la situación de asimetrías entre los países y también la situación de asimetrías en los países, por los datos que daba yo hace un momento. Repito, la vida aeroespacial no es nada más de quienes participan en la industria aeroespacial, sino todos. O sea, la influencia del sector aeroespacial es en todos aquellos que están en el sector aeroespacial y de todos aquellos que no están y no lo conocen. Esa sensibilidad es fundamental y creo que es un tema que el desarrollo tecnológico, que va mucho más rápido que el desarrollo de la propia infraestructura de tierra para los espacios y más allá del desarrollo natural de los países, debiera tener en una consideración primigenia. Creo que los aspectos de sensibilidad social son elementos fundamentales para lo que puede ser el futuro de la aeronáutica. Gracias.
Thank you, Mexico. Thank you. China, please.
尊敬的阿刘主席和刘芳秘书长，很高兴代表中国政府呢对会议讨论的关于创新问题呢，对于主席和秘书长提出的3个方面问题，和大家分享一下我们的一些观点。中国民航局呢，一直在坚信呢，创新呢，能够给全球的民航业能够产生巨大的推动力。中国民航呢，在创新方面呢，主要是聚焦在智慧机场和智慧空管这个2方面来去推动创新。我们希望通过创新呢，去解决中国民航发展中的难题，把民航的安全水平和服务质量呢，做好一个更好的平衡。把我们的对于旅客的服务的质量以及服务成本之间取得一个好的平衡，把我们对于旅客服务的普遍化和服务的个性化之间取得平衡。这些平衡的取得呢，我们觉得创新是一个非常好的一种渠道。在智慧机场和智慧空管的建设中，中国民航呢一直在以这种数据为载体，逐渐形成了一个业务流、信息流、资金流、价值流 等各类资源要素呢有机融合的一个民航的一个生态圈。通过推动民航自身的这种创新呢，让中国民航在中国的综合交通运输体系中呢更具有比较的优势，在整个的运输市场中呢更有竞争力。关于主席和秘书长提到的，在创新工作当中，对于监管方，如何看待和认识创新，以及对于创新所面临的一些挑战和风险呢，我们是这么认为的。从监管方来说呢，最主要的是要对创新有一个包容性。那么这个包容性呢，我们觉得是2个方面，第一个方面是平衡，第2个方面是适应。平衡呢，就是从监管当局来说，要在社会公众和行业的发展利益之间要取得一个平衡。第2个方面呢，就是我们要在已经进入民航行业的这种市场进入者之间和潜在的市场进入者之间要取得一个平衡。那么只有把这2个平衡同时把握好了，才能够准确地把握监管方它应该发挥的这种作用。同时呢，我们又不固步自封，能够确保不断有新的行业外的创新的动力呢，能够源源不断地进入这个行业，为民航行业发展呢提供一些新的超出我们既有的固有思维之外的一些新的想法。那么在监管方面呢，包容性的第2个方面呢，就是要监管方要主动去适应。中国民航呢，从今年的时候呢，我们在提这种精准监管，在明天开始的40届大会，我们也专门报告了一个工作文件。我们是希望呢，从今年开始呢，逐步把中国民航对于行业的监管呢，走向这种智慧监管。那么智慧监管的核心呢，其实就以数据来驱动。那么相关内容呢，我们已经在工作文件当中已经做了一个相对具体的说明。至于整个面对创新，我们面临的主要的挑战和风险，其实我们认为呢，除了刚才各位部长提到的这些观点呢，和行业界的很多这种这个领导者所提的这个观点，我们都认同。我们觉得还有一个问题，其实是法律上的挑战。现有的法律呢，其实是基于当时的科学技术和社会的认识水平来提出来的。但是呢，创新呢本身又是对现有的科学技术的不断的这种继承的基础上，还是个改进。那么有一些改进呢，随着它改进的越来越多，其实就会有一个质的量的改变，带来这种质的改变，会有些很多颠覆式的发展。那么其实是对现有的法律框架会造成非常大的冲击。会发现呢，其实现有很多创新合理，但是不合法。这个问题呢，在各个缔约国的国内法存在这个问题，在国际法上也存在这种问题，甚至说对于我们既有的很多这种管理框架呢，也带来一些颠覆式的冲击。比如说，无人机的出现对于适航体系，其实有可能就是一种颠覆式的冲击。无人机跟有人机相比呢，它的单机的价值低，飞机的用途单一，那么飞机的迭代更新速度快。但是有人机呢，恰恰相反，飞机的用途多，飞机的这种单价高，那么研制周期长，这种情况下的它的适航体系显然不适用于这种无人机的这种适航体系。那么这种技术的改进，其实就带来了整个我们管理的体系和法律框架的改进。技术本身确实带来了很多挑战和风险。那么，我们觉得对于从监管当局来说，特别对于 IQ。作为全球的一个统一的监管机构，我们也是呼吁更多的关心创新以及与之相配套的法律方面的风险和一些挑战。谢谢主席和秘书长，没有了。
Thank you, China. Of course, we started late and we're running behind schedule. So I will request that we be brief in our interventions. But a number of speakers have touched on the 3 aspects of the topics. The technological innovation for aviation, the incentivizing innovation, and the challenges and risks when introducing new technologies. But I want to now continue to the discussion on the other 2 aspects and to ask if Singapore, you have anything to add? No. I have also listed here IATA. Alessandro, you have anything to add to what you? No. And Airbus? No. So the challenge and risk when introducing new technologies, Brazil. Is Brazil here? Yeah, Brazil.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Liupra, for introducing me. When you talk about the risks and introducing new technologies, we have an example in Brazil and how we have these innovations and how we are discussing this theme with our group, in our ministry. One good example in Brazil is the first 3 rounds of airport concessions from 2011 to 2004, provided important lessons for us, leading to significant regulatory improvements in the last 2 rounds, especially the last one, 2019, and the start of this year. One of the goals was to make room for innovation. Investment obligations were replaced by demand-related investment triggers, based on level of service standards. This way, instead of prescribing an infrastructure solution, the government allowed the airport operator to find innovation ways to research the required level of service. It's important to say that we are opening our market. It's in the last count, and in March of this year, we concessioned 12 airports, and it was great to see that the bid was 1,000% of what was waiting. It will open the possibility to the concessions work a difference and do the negotiation with the airlines companies too. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Kenya, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For us, we like to approach it in 2 ways. First, conventional aviation systems, and secondly, non-conventional systems, because I do believe they require different approaches. If you take into account the conventional systems, the key issues related to efficiency and environmental impact, and of course, keeping with global standards. When it comes to the issue of non-conventional, or what we call emerging systems, the issues relate mainly to regulations and oversight, because these are areas where we have not developed appropriate or robust regulations or even oversight. In particular for us here in Kenya, we look at the issue of drones, for example. We have proliferation of drones in the last few years, for which we don't have adequate or robust regulations. Nobody knows what is supposed to be done, and yet they do impact very severely on our systems. We have used drones to support our transport systems, in particular the distribution of medicines in very remote areas. And because of this, we have a lot of young people coming up with innovative ideas. You saw yesterday a young lady of 16 years coming with a proposal concept, how we can actually have drones, ambulances, moving patients in future. This is what we need to build on, because our conventional transport systems are fairly weak. Infrastructure is undeveloped. And if you can have efficient drone systems which move medicines, move people who are sick, then it will actually save lives, but also cost less in terms of efficiency. The challenges we have is about training, because we require a lot of training in these areas. We require robust regulations through Parliament. It takes a long time to have systems like these ones, which are technical, approved by Parliament, because they have challenges themselves understanding the systems. And finally, we have to make sure that we have a well-coordinated oversight system in terms of those being regulated and regulators. And so all those issues need to be taken into account when you look at this, both traditional and non-traditional systems. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Minister Machare. Sierra Leone, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sierra Leone, we are very much aware of as a developing country, we are very much aware of our limitations. So we started from the point of putting our house together by establishing a technological innovation unit by an act of parliament, which will make it sustainable. With that commitment, we in the aviation industry are very much encouraged to be part of events like this, so that we'll be able to influence government decisions to channel some of these innovations towards the aviation industry. And also, we are doing a lot in terms of human capital development, because we do believe that we cannot move into the digital world with the level of education we already have. So we are working very hard towards that. And to practicalize what you are saying and to show the rest of the world that we are really committed to go to digitalization, the country has also introduced a visa on arrival. Now you can go into Sierra Leone without going through the hurdles of going to apply for visa when you're away from the country. You can get a visa on arrival. This is going to put pressure on immigration to seek digitalization immediately, because they would like to keep the flow of the people going. So with those interventions from government, they have also been able to employ somebody to head the unit they call Dr. Moina Senge. He has been employed and is currently working on the technological innovation in Sierra Leone. They will have Dr. John Tambi. I think he's a well-known person to the President of the Council. He is working on making sure that infrastructure is in place to accommodate this initiative, so that we'll be able to keep pace with the trend of digitalization. So we are on course, and we hope the commitment from government is encouraging us in the aviation industry to take on to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra Leone. In these discussions, a number of policy issues have been raised. What is ICAO's? We have 193 member states at different levels of development. But the standards we do set are for global application. That's one. Second, what type of standards will foster innovation, prescriptive or performance-based? Performance-based standards will provide the flexibility that is required in order to meet the needs of the industry. How do you couple innovation with no country left behind? And this is the question that my council struggled with when I asked that we should focus on innovation, because the question then they asked me is, you had the initiative of no country left behind, we understood that. Now you are bringing another initiative on innovation. How do you couple this together? And the fact is, there are elements of innovation that can actually assist member states to leapfrog existing legacy infrastructure. One of such was mentioned by Council. Space-based ADSB, for example, can assist to leapfrog. Our colleague from Alphabet, or the Google, I think it's a Google group, you mentioned Wing, about the fact that innovation comes from not only our sector, but other sectors. So we have to look at the experiences of other sectors. Mobile telephony, for example, has helped many states, developing states, to leapfrog the legacy land-based telephone system. So there is an element of innovation that is applicable to no country left behind. I showed you the example of the system we're trying to roll out now from ICAO, specifically targeted and no country left behind that will enable many of our member states who do not have reliable internet service provision to access ICAO services with the aid of a simple computer. But having said that, flexibility is also required as the different startup companies that are in this sector applies different models, sometimes to achieve the same or similar services, but in different operating environment. How do we get a hand of all that? Is this sufficient for us to review our rulemaking process? How do we get guidance material out to states in time? How do we pass where there is need for commonality and harmonization, which is the basis of the existence of ICAO? This is what we've been able to do to assure global interoperability. How do we have a system that can be fast in terms of rule-making, but flexible enough to not stifle innovation? So there are so many questions that are before us as government leaders, but industry leaders that we will need to work on in order to innovate the processes even within ICAO, but also at the national level. These and similar questions will be the subject of the next roundtable in the afternoon. Are there any other comments from the ministers and distinguished colleagues here on any other issues under this subject that you want to discuss? Before we go, Wing, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll try to keep my remarks brief. I know we're over time. A lot of wonderful comments made today about all the concerns and challenges facing us. And I just want to give from our experience a few things that we have seen work very well. One is partnership with regulators. A lot of times new entrants and technology companies that aren't traditionally based in aviation experience, we point at regulators and say, you're too slow, you're not achieving this process. But that's not fair. We think there's some responsibility on us as well. We had to learn the conversation, the terminology, the language to speak about safety and airworthiness and training. And that has been a very remarkably positive experience partnering with regulators. As mentioned this morning, we are working with the FAA in the United States, CASA in Australia, and TRAFI in Finland as we're operating in Helsinki. And the partnership with regulators around the world has really helped us to be capable of offering these services safely. That said, we think there's another language we all have to learn. Aviation has traditionally been up in the sky, but we're operating in people's yards, in small businesses, in cities, the multimodal transportation methods being spoken about earlier. We all have to learn the language of non-aviation. There's a lot of concern of local communities around safety, privacy, nuisance, and there's already regulations at the local level for those things. So we need to learn how to speak those languages too, about local issues in communities. And I think it's important that regulators and industry together work to make that transparent and work to offer suggestions for how local communities can work with aviation authorities and others to really understand what data, what information, and what level of transparency is needed. We also think that with innovation moving forward, as you mentioned, Mr. President, about creating innovation that is accessible to all, UTM technologies based on internet solutions are actually available today. We are making some, as I mentioned, there's many other companies working on that as well. And those solutions have been tested and proven in demonstrations with regulators around the world. And we'd like to see partnership between industry helping with investment and development of these technologies, but regulators providing the data, the constraints, the necessary regulation and rules so that in partnership we can provide access to airspace for anyone at any level that may need it. Ultimately, we know that it's required to create an airspace access system that is open to everyone, but also safe and secure. And so that's also done with partnership. And we are delighted to be participating in conversations like this to offer what we have learned, but also hear from others what their challenges are, so the technology we develop into the future can be suitable. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Wing. the normal aircraft, the reliability of normal aircraft, right now, we're looking to the 10 to the power of minus 6 to 10 to the power of minus 9. And that is the environment within which we operate. And that is what the traveling public has come to expect from us in terms of safety. The question then would be, if we're using drone to deliver pizza, is that the level of reliability that we should have? And what would be the impact of ensuring that level of reliability in terms of that operation? So there's so many questions that you are raising, and I think these questions are very important. I give the floor to ITF, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, President. I think I have to make a comment from a broader perspective as an international intermodal platform for the member countries and transport community in the world. Basically, I think we have a kind of illusion that innovation is like an improvement, but I don't think so, because improvement is a result of innovation, because innovation can also worsen the situation. So we have to maintain kind of a neutral perspective. And innovation, when you talk about that, it means that it's really something new. It's not really like an evolution, changing slowly from one point to another. It's totally new thing that comes necessarily with uncertainty and disruptions. So if we know that's a reality, we should recognize that there should be definitely the perception gap between regulator and deregulated, and industry and policymakers in industry. And what is clear is that we have opportunities and challenges together. So now, rather than focusing on the modal aspect, aviation is important and maybe specific and different from other modes, but we might better to concentrate on decarbonization and connectivity and universal access. So if we target the higher level of objectives and goals, I think definitely we can find some roles for the aviation sector. And at the same time, we should be very careful about the security issues and also legal and ethical issues. So I think it might be a good idea to make a kind of checklist and some metrics of the different elements in the transport sector. So fortunately, we have a summit next year focusing on the innovation in Leipzig. So we like to invite you all and to discuss and develop further these ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ITF. What I would suggest that we do now, I want to give the floor to the Secretary General to go through the review of the outcome statement from this meeting. It's part of the things we're supposed, our deliverable for this morning. And if we can do that in a very quick manner, then we would have caught up with the assignment given to us for this morning. Secretary General, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I go through, I think we have a very good discussion, dynamic discussion this morning. Certainly, I think no matter what we like or dislike, the reality is there is a newcomers to join us. And also, in a way, it change our life, change our way of doing business. So we need to address them, and in a way, to ensure safe and secure operation of our one sky. So that is, I think, our task we should do. So with that in mind, I would like to go with you through the declaration we circulated to you as a draft. The first paragraph of the draft outcome statement follows the international standards used for high-level discussion, communique, and declarations. We state the purpose and intent of our gathering. Any comments? No? I'm going to the second paragraph. Of the preamble, we identify certain innovations discussed, and we state our encouraging position. So, third paragraph. we draw the clear links between the potential benefits of innovation and the new technologies to the achievement of ICAO's No Country Left Behind initiative and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Any comments? Yes.
May I kindly ask if you could come back to the paragraph 2? It went too fast. I just want to check one thing.
Okay.
Just a suggestion that when you are listing the different elements like artificial intelligence and so on, I think it might be wise to add the big data as well.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Good suggestion. Okay, now move to paragraph 3. Any suggestion? No. Paragraph 4 of the statement. Paragraph 4 to paragraph 7 relate to the matters of policies and business model for innovation, as discussed this morning. Please note that following paragraphs 8 to 13 in the second page will be subject to this afternoon's discussion. So now we focus on paragraph 4 to 7 related to this morning's discussion. Any addition to the draft for these paragraphs? And now, so I move to following. The fourth, then I can give some detailed explanation about one after another, if you wish. Maybe I'll go first quickly. The fourth paragraph of the draft outcome statement express our support to states' efforts in establishing frameworks in which innovation and new technologies can grow and evolve. The fifth paragraph will address the challenges and the risks presented by these new technologies and business models, and will suggest elements for a high-level solution. Paragraph 6 related to investing in research and development in large-scale invention, while also developing new technologies with low costs. Paragraph 7 brings forth the outreaching and high-level design for the establishment of an enabling framework. Any comments? No, President?
Okay, thank you, Secretary General, for the introduction of the draft outcome statement. Our objective is to put forth our intent to acknowledge, address, and adopt innovation and new technologies in the aviation sector. Please review this document with me. The Secretary General has asked for comments. If you still have any comments with respect to this, please let me know. Yes, Henrik, European Commission. Yeah. Mm.
Thank you.
Press the button. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's working. Thank you. No, thank you, Mr. President. I just had try to quickly glance it through, and I have just one suggestion to consider, which is that it might be also in the spirit of all the discussions and what is happening around us to point out that these new technologies also provide us more tools to reduce the environmental footprint of aviation or to promote sustainability. I think it might be good to point that out because it's also true. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. We take note of that. I have ACI, and then after Airbus, ACI.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to see somewhere, I don't have a specific suggestion of where to put it, about community engagement. It's very important for airports.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I think Wings also emphasized that in his presentation. Airbus, please.
A rather similar comment to the one made by Mr. Hololai a minute ago. I'm back to the point of the visit of Greta Thunberg to this city in a few days. if we don't mention explicitly that we are targeting through anything we do, innovation, community engagement, you name it, that we are targeting to change the environmental impact of aviation, I think we are missing a point. And we really must make it explicit, otherwise being very heavily criticized, we are all, but the aircraft manufacturer is, I can tell you, what people will tell out of it is, you know what, you're including startups who are people who at the moment store data everywhere and emit CO2 by storing data to finally make your industry overall more CO2 emitting. I mean a cliche, but I think it's very important to explain what our key goals are, and I think this one must be visible somewhere.
Yeah, thank you, Airbus. Jeffers.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Tout à fait en accord avec ce qui vient d'être dit sur la protection de l'environnement. C'était vraiment un des sujets sur lesquels l'innovation peut avoir le plus d'impact. Je voudrais aussi peut-être proposer qu'il y ait un ajout plus spécifique sur la cybersécurité, dans la mesure où toutes ces innovations sont largement fondées sur la digitalisation, sur des outils digitaux qui, sans la cybersécurité, poseront un problème d'acceptabilité et donc aussi lié à l'acceptation par les communautés, par les passagers, par les gens de manière générale sur ces nouvelles technologies. Donc vraiment, je pense que également un petit point plus spécifique sur la cybersécurité, même si l'on parle de data protection, on est au-delà de la data protection, il y a d'autres aspects. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, you're right. We will provide a proposed text in the afternoon session for these two items with respect to the issue of environmental sustainability of our work, and then with respect to the issue of big data, cyber security, and the community engagement, all these issues. Huh? And data privacy. Well, with increased digitalization, we will have to work with a lot of data. There's a whole new imperative with respect to that. I would like to hear from you during the lunch break what role you think ICAO should play. In that regard, what support can we provide to the industry in that regard? You want to say something about that now, Wing? Okay, Wing, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, I was going to make a comment on paragraph 4. It's great to see ICAO encouraging states to develop frameworks. I think it's also important to encourage states to share with each other. There is so much happening so quickly that lessons learned and best practices can be shared across states, and I think ICAO can be the forum for that learning and that sharing to take place.
Yeah, thank you. That's also important. We'll review our text. We'll do the additional drafting. We'll look at it in the afternoon. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Excellencies, for your excellent contribution and sharing of valuable insights. Before we adjourn, I'll give the floor now to Nigeria, to invite the Minister of Nigeria to make his presentation. He's providing graciously the lunch for this afternoon. So, Nigeria, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and honorable ministers. Just before the invitation, Mr. President, kindly indulge me to make a half-a-minute statement. One, of course, has been adequately covered by Singapore as roles as politicians and leaders of our various aviation policy-making bodies. And I think paragraph 4 is speaking directly to Nigeria, Mr. President. We are currently doing or redoing our Civil Aviation Act and the new civil aviation policy for Nigeria, which we intend to share, especially with ICAO, the IATA, Council, ACI, and AFCAC, and a few other states. And just to make one statement, Mr. President, also regarding what you just said, it caught our attention in Nigeria that the question has been put as to what ICAO is, whether it is an international organization setting standards for aviation or whether it is the other way around. And I think I'm not opening the debate and making a positive comment, but in Nigeria we've already taken a position that ICAO is indeed an international organization setting standards for aviation. Having said this, Mr. President, permit me to respectfully invite every single minister and delegation to the lunch by Nigeria. For ministers, it will be on the 3rd floor. And then, of course, for all other members of delegation, it will be on the 4th floor. Thank you very much, and come with us to enjoy the food of Nigeria, and I guarantee you it won't be very feverish.
Okay, thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Let's go have lunch.